Hey guys, it's Sunray, and welcome back to the My So-Called Thoughts podcast. Thank you for tuning in. If you heard episode 1 and you're back for episode 2, thank you so much. I truly appreciate it. I'm Sunray, and I'm your host. I'm a wife, mama, musician, and I like to talk and blab about random things that I feel like not only but I feel like a lot of people, almost everybody, is actually thinking deep down, but nobody wants to address it. We deep dive into all of that here. Some serious things and some not so serious things. So, as we dissect it, I really like to talk about, if there are serious things or just whatever we're dealing with, let's talk about how to heal and deal with it. I want to preface and just apologize if I sound nasally. I've been dealing with what feels like a head cold or sinus issues or just something the past couple days. So my apologies, but really am passionate about this podcast. So I really want to be consistent in uploading episodes, which we have new episodes every Thursday. So if you haven't tuned in yet, please check it out. I'm not sure where you're listening to this on, but if you're not sure or you want to refer it to somebody else, you can listen to this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Anchor, if you use Anchor, Spotify, and the episodes also go up on YouTube. So just want to go ahead and dive in today. As you may already see the title, today's title is The Millennial Curse. So this is going to be an interesting one. And if you're a millennial, I feel like you really may enjoy this. And if you're Gen Z or baby boomer or just whoever, I still think you'll enjoy it because we got a lot to dive in and to, dissect today. So let's go ahead and hop in. I'm a millennial. I was born in 1994, grew up in the 90s, early 2000s. And, on last week's podcast, if you haven't heard it, I talked about just the tea on social media and, things about social media and how they impact our lives and how it's changed. But on last week's podcast, I talked about growing up without social media for, at least a good majority of my life until it started to be introduced heavily into my preteens and teens. But with that being said, I remember growing up, when our world overall was strikingly different than what it was today as far as social media and just other things. Growing up in the 90s and early 2000s it's like a 180 to the kids growing up, nowadays. And I think everybody knows what I mean by that. But I feel like, today everything is about millennial versus Gen Z. There's so many comparisons. There's always people talking about it. There's always different people ranting about it on different social medias and in real life. But, considering I'm not Gen Z, I just want to say I feel like I can't really speak to what it feels like to be a part of that generation. And I can only speak for what it feels like to be a millennial. So, but I've been thinking about what it feels like to be a millennial because our generation just seems to be strikingly different than Gen Z and the generations before us. Like millennials are just different. We're just like a different breed, and it's weird. We grew up in a time where there was no social media for what feels like a while. The music was different. Like, oh my God, don't even get me started on the music. You know what? That is probably just going to be another podcast in itself. I'm going to have to deep dive into what it was like to just experience the music in the 90s and, 2000s. And I'm sure anyone could say the same thing about the amazing music in, the 80s or 70s or whatever. But not even just the music, what we did for fun was different. Like the air was different, like I feel like it was just a different aura. Like time was different. Like it just seems like time just ran so much slower. Not to side tangent, but I feel like I did see something, that stated how science time moves faster now, but whatever. I don't know. May have to go back and research that. But, with all these differences in comparison today, I along what feels like a lot of millennials, we find ourselves being extremely nostalgic about this stuff. And I have to say, I am like the nostalgia queen. Like, I just love thinking about nostalgic stuff. I love looking back at like the early 2000s and the 90s. I even love the 80s too. I really love the 80s. Love the fashion, love the music, just love everything. But I'm so nostalgic about just all of it. Just the fashion in the 90s and just the shows. Like, if you ask me if I want to watch a movie and like I'm maybe in a sour mood or something and I want to feel good, I'm probably going to throw on like an older movie, not like older movie, but just like an early 2000s or 90s movie. Like I'm going to watch I'm going to want to watch like Bring It On, like the first one, or I'm going to want to watch like Sleepless in Seattle or like The Parent Trap, you know what I mean? The Parent Trap with Lindsay Lohan, you know what I mean? So, it just makes me feel good inside. And I know I can't be the only one. Like, it's just like this tingly feeling that is just different. Like, it just hits different. And if you go on TikTok, there are so many nostalgic accounts out there highlighting all this stuff that I just mentioned. And you know what? I gotta be honest. Yes, I do follow them. Like, okay, side tangent. There's this woman that I follow on there, and I really don't know how old she is. I'm gonna guess that she's like in her 20s. I think she may have made a TikTok about having a child. I know that doesn't mean that you're in your 20s, but she didn't look like she was like super young. But she literally makes TikToks about, like, someone in the comments will say like, hey, my mom used to dress like this in the 90s, and like she kind of dresses up as like the 90s mom aesthetic, and I feel like she has hit like every mom like possible as far as what they would wear and like their makeup and their hair, and she does it flawlessly, and I'm just like, this is awesome. So there's so many other nostalgic accounts, highlighting early 2000s trends, highlighting the music. And yes, I follow a good chunk of them because they are just so fun. And another side tangent, I follow this guy on there too that makes these 90s sitcoms. Like, he remakes them, and he has the intro music, and the way he films it, it's hilarious. I don't know what his handle is. Go check it out. Just look up like 90s sitcom. I bet you'll find him, and you're gonna get a good laugh out of it. But it, again, just watching this stuff, witnessing this stuff, it just makes me feel good inside. And I can't even describe it, to be completely honest with you. It's just, it's weird. But, I've also seen a lot of posts, or even I've had conversations with people, with how they feel like they miss how things used to be. Everything used to be so simple. That's what everyone says. Everything used to be so easy and carefree. And it really got me thinking, like, do we feel like this because we're just all adults now? And, now we have to deal with all these adulting things, like, having children and renting and buying and, having a mortgage and, just having to pay a car note and finishing college, just all this stuff. And so why are we feeling this way? Is it just because we're not kids anymore? We're not going on the playground, and, we didn't have any responsibilities as children. So, it just makes me curious about that, but with all these things I'm mentioning about a whole generation, like, just being really nostalgic, how is it that it kind of seems like an entire generation of people are kind of feeling in the same, ballpark of feelings? And I don't know. Me personally, I don't think it's a coincidence. I don't believe in coincidences. I feel like everything happens for a reason, but that to me, it's just not a coincidence. Once again, I'm scrolling through TikTok and I'm seeing millennials make videos about how they're depressed and stressed, want to drop the 9 to 5. That one right there. Okay. I've heard that one more than ever, and I've seen it everywhere, and I've seen it all over the place. The desire to drop the 9 to 5. And I feel like that desire, and I'm sure there's other people out there that are not millennials that have that desire, but I feel like I've seen millennials more than ever have the desire to drop the 9 to 5. Now, I will say, I personally don't think that like 9 to 5 jobs are bad. I know a lot of people enjoy them. I've had one, and it was actually nice to have like a set schedule and have stability, to know like what your shift was all the time, and for there to be no change, to have those weekends off, and you'd have holidays off. But what is it with the 9 to 5? Like, why does it seem like this generation is having more of an issue with it? I want to dig deeper, and I've seen that a lot of people say that they want to ditch the 9 to 5 because they feel like they aren't working the job that they want. They're working the job that they have to work. Now, one thing I will say is, a job is a job is a job. That's what I always say. If you're making money and you have a job, and even if it's not paying what you desire, or it may not be something that you directly want to do, you're already more blessed than a lot of people in this world that wish, that they did have a job. But I think what's happening is that a lot of millennials have been pushed into a job. Well, we're going to dive down that road. A lot of millennials have been pushed into a job that they may not want when they could be doing something that they loved, or maybe even getting paid for whatever they love or that they're passionate about. So, how does this happen? Like, how does this happen, honestly? Like, once again, to what feels like an entire generation. And, I know that this isn't every millennial. I know that there are so many out there that are thriving and doing what they want to do, doing what they love to do. They went to college, they wanted to be a doctor, they became a doctor, they're happy about it, they're riding off to the sunset, they've got their house, their 2 kids, and their Mercedes outside. Kudos to you. Like, I'm genuinely happy for you. So I know that this isn't every millennial, but I feel like there is a collective of millennials that will understand what I'm saying. But I think that this directly correlates to something a lot of us were raised to think was the only way to go. I think you already know what I'm going to say. College. College, 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 college. I feel like there's so many of us millennials who were pushed to go to college. I'm just going to say it right there, then and there. It's either college or you better find a job or have a plan. Wait a minute, plan? What plan? At 18? I feel like the generation before us, not a lot of them maybe had a chance to go to college. I know a lot of them there were different types of jobs. There were a lot of factory jobs, a lot of different things. A lot of times you would go into the family business and things of that nature. So when our generation came about, and it seemed like college was the only way to success, because if you wanted to be a nurse, if you wanted to go down this career path, that career path, you needed a degree. That's just what it was about back then. I can go ahead and point out now that that's a huge difference between Gen Z and millennials. You don't need a college degree to be successful anymore. Like, that's just the straight up facts, like the straight up truth. A lot of us went to college or attempted to go to college, maybe didn't finish, unsure of what to major in. Which is normal. I will say that. There's nothing wrong with, if you're in a place right now where you're wanting to go to college, but you're just kind of unsure of what to major in. I literally, I chose like 3 different majors before I landed on where I wanted to be. And I ended up, getting a bachelor's degree in psychology. But, a lot of us, even though we were unsure, we were still forced to go because it seemed to be the only pathway to success, which, yeah, going to college can provide you with a lot of success career-wise. If you're looking to be a doctor, lawyer, or, architect or different things, like, yeah, you probably, yes, you need a college degree to be successful in that, career path. But, also, I can't be the only person that had parents that pushed college. My parents are amazing. I love them so much. I love them to death, and they only want the best for me. And they want me to be successful. And that is what they believed would be the pathway to success, college. So, I do understand that. I do. And I don't blame my parents for that. There's no bitterness or anguish there. It makes sense. That was what they viewed as, you want to be successful, go to college. And I don't think there's anything completely wrong with that, in a sense. But we'll dive more into that in just a moment. But it's just interesting. I feel like a whole generation, the one before us, they were taught that, you go to college, or, you need to get an education. It's the only route to success. The only route to success. Whole generation before us, a lot of us, a lot of them believe that. So in turn, our parents wanted us to attend college so that we could achieve success. But I think that we've all learned in today's society, you don't need that degree anymore. You don't need that degree to be successful. I was watching this video, and I don't remember what it was called. I don't even remember. I just landed on it. It was probably on my YouTube recommended page, and somebody was going up to these different people and asking them if they needed a college degree to be successful. But I think that what they did was they asked first, like, what do you do for a living? Or like, how much money do you make a year? And you'd have people, they're like, yeah, I make 6 figures. I make, 200,000 a year. I do this, I do that. And they're like, well, do you have a degree? Do you think you need a degree to be successful? And they're like, no, no, no. Now, I don't know what those people did for a living, so that goes into it as well. But again, just another interesting factor, regarding all of this. It's interesting because it's like, if what you wanted to do or what you're passionate about, didn't seem like it could generate a solid or stable income, it was go to college and get a real job. And I know a lot of people who are creative and artistic can relate to this. If you wanted to be a musician, you may have been told it's a 1 in a million chance. You want to be an actor? Actors don't make money. You'll never be a Brad Pitt. You'll never be the Bradley Cooper or, the Angelina Jolie, Jennifer Aniston, whoever, Jennifer Lawrence. Go to school. Become a doctor. You want to be an artist? That's not stable. Go to school and get your 9 to 5 set. And I feel like this, millennial generation who grew up in the 80s and 90s, where art, creativity, entertainment was extremely unique and transformative, it only birthed a generation that longed to become that. And because we all had to go to college and get a real job, we suppressed our creativity and don't go after it because we don't have the money for it, or we don't have the time to actually invest in the things that we want to do. And I know that there are also a lot of people out there that wanted to go to college and were excited about going and were excited about the career path that they had outlined for themselves once they completed their degree. And I mentioned this earlier. I'm happy for those people. Kudos to you. You are amazing. But within this group, there's a group of people that graduated, were ready to take on the world by storm in their new career, but now have a tough time getting a job because all these companies don't want to hire entry-level workers. Let's talk about that. Or you've got jobs that will literally pay you $15 an hour, even though you have a bachelor's degree. You got jobs out here saying, yeah, we'll give you $14 an hour, but you got to have the master's. What? Make it make sense. It makes absolutely no sense. So it's like getting that dream job after college has now become harder for millennials because of all of this. Or, some can't even get the call back, even though they've got all the qualifications necessary, to be amazing at the job. They've got everything laid out and they can't even get a call back. Along with college, we've got student loans. So many millennials are drowning in student loan debt. And because of a lot of millennials were forced to go to college, a lot of them are swimming in debt that they never wanted. I have student loans. I'm still paying them off. And they're not going anywhere anytime soon, and unless they do that whole student loan forgiveness thing, but not sure if that's actually going to happen or who qualifies for that. But, having thousands upon thousands of dollars in debt for years can be extremely daunting. One may feel like unless they hit the lottery, they'll never be able to pay them off. I was really, really, really blessed. The college I went to, my debt is not really that bad. And, obviously I only knew about my own debt. So when I would hear that some people have student loan debt in the 6 figures, I'm just like, oh my God, like my heart breaks for you. And then like the things I mentioned above, they can't get the job because of qualifications, or these jobs aren't paying enough, and this and that and this and that. It's crazy. And it's hard. It's really hard. Some people have multiple payments a month. So we've got multiple student loan bills. We're working a job we may or may not have wanted. We may not be getting paid enough. And we're still expected to be happy and functioning in society. Now, of course, again, be thankful for your college experience if you went. And be thankful, that you have a job. Like I mentioned earlier, I try to see life, my glass is half full. So you want to be thankful for everything. But it doesn't mean it's any less difficult, and it can be hard. And I can see now why many millennials struggle with their mental health, and why it seems like mental health awareness has become even more prevalent in America today. I want to talk more about the mental health aspect in a few moments, because I feel like there is a lot that needs to be discussed there. But to continue with the financial aspect, millennials, including myself, have had an extremely hard time finding a home to purchase. Our parents, they didn't have to pay all this crazy amount of money that homes cost now. It's insane with the inflation and just with the market. The taxes were not as much back then either. So, now our generation, we can't even get a home because we're all competing with one another. With today's market, finding a home to purchase has been next to impossible. We're all, old enough to buy homes now, but continue to get beat out in the end. I mean, they're saying it's looking better now, but it's been difficult for the past couple of years. And there are several corporations out there that are buying homes cash to rent out, which I guess, Nate, no hate to you if you're doing that, get your coins. But these companies are just making business deals. Now the millennials are old enough to purchase homes. And with the state of our economy, it's just harder to do it. Again, it's hard. And don't even get me started on the rise of rent. That is a whole nother situation in itself that is just crazy. But I do want to dive into that mental health aspect. I just wanted to cover that financial part really quick. But, because of all the things I mentioned above, I feel like millennials have struggled with their mental health. I was really curious about the statistics regarding mental health in millennials, so I looked it up, did on Google. And, I was reading an article that said this, and I am quoting it because I don't want to butcher anything, but said the Business Insider took a look at the mental health state of millennials, which is ages, 23 to 38 in 2019, I guess, based off this article. The forecast for millennials' mental health in 2020 doesn't look pretty. Depression and deaths of despair are both on the rise among the generation, linked to issues such as loneliness and stress. Continuing on, it goes on to say that millennials also feel that their jobs have an outsized role in their overall mental health. Because of longer work hours and stagnant wages, millennials suffer from higher rates of burnout than other generations. Many of them have even quit their jobs for mental health reasons. That's just one article I found, but I was able to find others that stated things of that nature. As I mentioned before, I've seen different TikTok trends and Instagram reels and just talking to people, stating stuff like this, that their mental health is, tanking because of all the things I mentioned about. They can't get a home. They can't afford this. They can't afford that. How they wish they could find a job that pays them enough. How it's not fair that they spent all this money on a degree in a field that won't hire them, and how they don't have time for their passions because they work so hard. It's just interesting and it's crazy. I know for myself, I've struggled. As I mentioned before I went to college and I got a bachelor's degree in psychology. And again, I went through like 3 majors before that because I didn't know what I wanted to do.
Well, to get a little bit more candid, talking about that, I knew what I loved and I knew what I was passionate about, but I didn't know how I wanted to apply myself regarding college. I didn't know what major to go after. I knew that I loved music. I loved the arts. I loved, theater. I loved singing. I loved, all these different things. But, kind of where I live, if you were going to pursue those things, they were kind of only in like a certain avenue. Like I knew that I wanted to make music and different things. I wasn't sure if I specifically wanted to do like Broadway, as far as like musical theater, and then as far as music, I knew I looked at some colleges, but then it was just kind of going the jazz route, which I didn't have an issue with, but it wasn't really my vibe. So, if you are creative or you're a musician, I'm sure that you probably can just understand, I probably could have went for those things, but then there's also, cost and other reasons why I didn't do that. But, I just wasn't sure how I wanted to apply myself. And, and I totally understood, student loan debt because I had an older sister that went to college. And, I wasn't sure how I wanted to apply myself because I knew what I was getting into financially. So I actually went to 2 different schools. I went to, first school was like it wasn't Bible college, but it was like, and it wasn't like seminary, but it was a Christian, it was a Christian college. And I was going to major in music ministry at the time. I was super involved with my church, and I was super, heavily involved in the worship aspect and different things. But then, for me personally, I felt like, okay, I'm going to spend all this money to become a worship leader at a church. And for me, I did not want to do that. I did not want to spend 4 years doing that and learning things that, I was fortunate enough to be able to learn at my church. And, I know that others that want to do that, you proceed and do what you got to do. But for me, it just wasn't the right thing. And I ended up, switching majors and switching schools. And I ended up landing on psychology because, I didn't want to get a ministry degree. I had nothing against the school. It was actually an amazing school. It just, truth be told, I felt like I made a rash decision when I decided going there. I had looked at a bunch of colleges and I didn't know what else to do. And I'm sure I can't be the only, millennial that has been in that place where you just kind of had to pick something, from the pressure. And that's kind of what I did, which is really stupid. But I think when you're young, you don't know any better and you don't understand. And I was 18 years old and I was confused and I didn't know what I was doing. But nevertheless, I ended up going to a different school, which is where I ended up graduating with a bachelor's degree in psychology. And I landed on psychology because, I was like, well, they didn't have music at the school and it was closer to home because at the time I just didn't have any desire to be out at a school that I didn't want to be at in a town that I didn't want to be at, going to school when I don't even really want to be there. That's why I was like, I'd rather just be closer to home because what's the point of being away when you don't want to do what you're doing or you're unsure about what you're doing. I landed on psychology because I've always been passionate about mental health and helping others. And I figured I was like, well, if I ended up pursuing this, let's say I got like a, PhD or a side D or whatever you call it in psychology or, whatever that, I love helping people. So I think that this could be interesting. And all in all, I am happy that I did it. I'm super happy to have my degree. I'm super happy that I finished. I was able to graduate in 4.5 years. Class of 2017. I graduated in, the fall of 2017. But, it was tough because of that pressure, feeling that it was the only way to go. And plot twist, coming out of college, I didn't even end up working in the field and I still haven't. And that will probably be another podcast. I have one coming up soon where I'm going to be talking about like work and toxicity in the workplace. So stay tuned for that episode. It'll be coming in the next few episodes. I ended up not even going in the field. I've never worked in the field. And goes back to what I talked about, these millennials going to college, working their tails off. And then, plot twist, you can't even get a job in your field because either there's not many out there, or you got to go back to school to get a master's. And maybe you can do that, or maybe you don't have the time. Maybe the finances aren't there. There's so many different factors. Or maybe you just don't want to because you had put in all this effort just trying to get to the bachelor's, So, it just goes back to that. I know I'm not the only person out there that has gone to college and is not even working in the field that they went to college for because, it's a dog eat dog world out there. You have to get a job. You have to be able to pay for, your life and to do things and adulting and all of that. So, for me, as I am extremely grateful that, I got my degree in psychology, as I said, being that creative person and, really wanting to pursue that. But I just didn't know how, and I was so insecure about my craft growing up. So insecure. I know I say this all the time. Probably will be another podcast because I have so much to talk about with that. But, I never thought that I could make it because I just was always taught to get a real job. You want to do music, you want to do theater, you want to do all this other stuff. It's a dog-eat-dog world out there. You're not going to get paid. You're not going to be able to be successful. And, it's hard because all of our parents mean well and they want the best for us. They love us so much and they just want us to be successful. But unfortunately, for creative people like me, we ended up having to suppress our passions and put them to the side and go after things that we like. I love psychology. I like it. I love it. But my real passion was always the arts. And I know and I hope that there are many people out there that are passionate about the arts, that understand exactly, what I'm talking about. But, when you think about it, and I mentioned this earlier, with all the business of needing to go to college and working full time and or part time, because there was moments where I was, part time, but it was practically full time, working in college. I feel like I didn't have as much time to, really pour my time into figuring out the passions that I had, and actually like pursuing them on the side, because I was either, busy with school, or I was working, or, attempting, when you're young, you want to have a social life, which honestly was, pretty much, next to non existent for me. But, I always wanted to pursue those passions, and the timing just wasn't there. And, you could totally say that that's an excuse, and it probably is, but when you're young, you know what I mean? Like, you're tired, you're like, oh, I got homework, I got all this, and you make all these excuses. And, you know, I will say that, now I'm in a place in my life where, and I feel like a lot of millennials, are in this place, but I feel like I'm finally like, you know what? I don't care anymore. I am so tired of caring about what other people's opinions are and what people think that I should do with my life. I'm just going to do the things that I love and that I want to do. I would rather do it and fail than to be in my 80s, and being like, man, I never tried. You know what I mean? And, it's not easy, having a bunch of, responsibilities in my life. I'm a wife and I'm a mom, and, those two responsibilities that I love and adore and am so thankful for so much, they do take a lot of time. And all my wives and mamas out there, I know, what I'm saying. But, as I mentioned, I feel like there's a lot of other millennials that are having this feeling too. So many millennials are starting businesses and pursuing the arts, and they're ditching that 9 to 5, like I talked about in the beginning, because, they're like, look, growing up, you'll have one that says, growing up, I loved cosmetics and I loved doing hair, but I went to school to become a doctor, but I didn't want to do that. So they left school, and now they've got their own little small business. You know what I mean? And there's nothing wrong with pursuing both, too. But I feel like there's so many millennials now that are kind of almost like waking up in a sense. And they're like, dude, we're either almost 30 or we are past 30. And hello, time is of the essence. We've got to do the things that we love. We've got to do the things that we're passionate about. We're out here, broke and from not getting paid enough, and now there's inflation and we can't buy houses, we can't do this, but at least maybe we could try to do the things that we love. And it's interesting because, like I mentioned earlier, you got all these jobs where you don't even need a degree anymore. They're looking for experience. Now, that's a whole nother conversation of whether or not you have the experience, but it's like, unless you're trying to be a lawyer or a doctor or different things, you've got these companies where a degree isn't required, or they'll send you to school, and, while you're in the process of getting hired. But overall, I know that there's a lot of millennials out there where this may not have been your reality. And I know that maybe, you knew that you always wanted to be a doctor and you went to school and became that, and now you're a successful doctor practicing family medicine, or, you always knew that you wanted to be a lawyer and you've gone to law school and now you practice, law for insurance companies. I don't know. And, maybe this reality wasn't yours, but I feel like there is a collective of people out there that are creative, that know exactly what I'm talking about during this podcast, and totally understand that, like, hey, there's been pressures from every avenue as we have grown up, and we wanted to be this, we wanted to do this, but we didn't feel like we could. And now we're doing it, and I think that that is awesome. I don't care how old you are, as long as you have breath in your lungs, go after what you want to do. It's never too late. It doesn't mean that we can't reach the successes that we always wanted to reach, or that we can't, go after them, because we can't. We're adults now, depending on your circumstances, we're not being told what to do anymore. And, we're not being told whether or not this is okay. We can go after those things that we want to go after. Going back and, recapping that article that I mentioned earlier, and I'm paraphrasing, it said something like, the millennials, unlike previous generations, they're now seeking therapy and support for mental health more than ever before. Now, whether that's a good thing or bad thing, you know, it means that we're stronger. And, we're strong, and although some of us may not be where we want to be, we recognize that, like, the things that we've experienced, not being able to get a job or having, to go to college, or, just our mental health, being in the tank because, we grew up tough, or, we can't afford to buy a home, and finances are just crazy, and just all these different things. Some of us, or a lot of us, still believe that we can at least push through. Unless somebody convinces me otherwise, because all the things I talked about, I truly believe that millennials are just one in a million because of all the things I mentioned. And, I love millennials. I think that we are a hybrid, because it's like we're in this in-between stage where, like, there was no technology, and then we've got all this technology, and, we're connected to it, but we're not. But I don't mean to go off on a tangent there. But it does make me happy to see millennials thriving. And I'm starting to see that a lot more based off the things that I'm mentioning. You've also, another thing too, kind of, going back to the whole housing situation, you've got millennials living in RVs and vans, okay? And they are living their best life. Modular homes, everything, on 5 acres of land, because they said, look, I can't afford a house because there's no houses that are less than $300,000, and based off my salary, I can't afford that. But hey, I'm living my best life in this van, in this RV, because I'm traveling the country. I'm doing da 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 da. And I respect it. I've got mad respect for it. Because you know what? Sometimes it's about quality over quantity. And sometimes you have to do what you got to do to be happy. So, to see some millennials, go after those things that I mentioned that they've always wanted to do, and they didn't have to go to college to get it done, and they aren't drowning in student loan debt. Like I said, that does make me happy, because they are out there. And there's some that have been able to land a deal on a good home. And I'm so happy for you, and I can't wait till, a lot of us are in that position, But for the rest of us, I think that the best thing that we can do is just try to move forward the best way that we can. And I think that that's what most millennials are doing nowadays. Most millennials are, seeing Gen Z go after their dreams. And we're like, what the heck? Why aren't we doing that? I'm going to ditch the 9 to 5. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to, I'm going to cut my losses, and I'm going to live in a tiny home because I can afford it. And I think that that's awesome. I look at myself and I wonder how I could have gone back and done certain things differently. And then I think again, and I wonder, you know what? I'm exactly where I need to be. And I hope that more millennials feel like this, no matter where they are in life, or no matter where you are, that, we're exactly where we need to be. And we just have to keep moving forward. And while we are an extremely interesting generation, that may have had to go to college and, put our dreams on the back burner for a little bit, or, we may not have been able to, get the home that we want, or finances are tough because of inflations, and, there's student loan debt through the roof. We've got air in our lungs, and I think that we're all going to be okay. So just to wrap up this podcast, if you are a millennial, my heart goes out to you. And we are gonna do the dang thing, okay? We're gonna make it. But if you made it to the end of the podcast, thank you so much for tuning in with me today. This is something that I've been really passionate about, and I really love talking about, because I like I said, I see it all the time. I see different millennials just trying to get by and trying to move forward. So it's something I love chatting about and talking about. If you, again, made it to the end of this podcast, please be sure to, if you have something to say or if you have an opinion, we have a YouTube page where the podcast is also uploaded. So please go like and subscribe or listen to it again. Leave, leave a view on that too if you're listening to this on like Anchor, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify. But leave a comment. I'm really curious to know what people think about this, because after all the things I've seen on social media about it, I feel like everyone really has an opinion about it. But whether you're a millennial or not, thank you again for listening. And I hope wherever you are in the world that you're doing well. And I hope things are going okay for you. And I hope that they continue to go great for you and okay for you. So thanks again for tuning in. And once again, this is Sunray, and I'm out. Peace.